UK trial of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine for children has been paused for the moment. This is while regulators investigate possible links to rare blood clots in adults.
Now, the announcement... These are very rare.
They're very rare.
And this came after a day of confusion over whether the European Medicines Agency had found a link between the AstraZeneca vaccine and these clots, OK? So these have been associated with the deaths of 7 people vaccinated in Britain. Let's go to Danny Altman. Danny is a professor of immunology at Imperial College London. And there's Professor Fiona Watt. Fiona is the executive chair of the Medical Research Council. Fiona, let's start with you. There's so much we want to talk to you about this. Is this a sensible precaution, or do you both believe it is somewhat of an overreaction?
I personally would say that it's sensible because the risks to young people of being seriously ill with COVID is lower than for older people. So it's a sensible precaution in my view.
Professor Altman?
I think we all need to be confident in the vaccines, and we all need to feel that there's proper scrutiny and all those safety checks are in place. So, utterly proper, to pause and take stock.
Right, put it in context for me, Professor. Yeah. I mean, basically, do the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few on this one?
You've got 2 professors here. Which one do you want?
I'm talking to you, Professor. Sorry, Professor Danny.
Professor Danny. Yeah, so, I think to discuss this, you do need to kind of get your head around the maths, don't you? That, on the one hand, to me, the paramount issue for us at the moment is that we're trying to get our lives back to normal. We're trying to escape from the debacle of the last year, and we're trying to buck the trend of the third wave in mainland Europe. And our way of doing that is by having a magnificent rollout of a nationwide vaccine program. And somehow we need to kind of keep that well and truly on the rails. And that, to me, that's absolutely paramount. And then somewhere in the back of your mind, you need to be mindful that there's a risk of, 1 in 600,000 people that this rare event could happen to you. And we need to mitigate that. We need to have, measures in place to spot it and deal with it before it's too late, a bit like with that anaphylaxis at the start of the programme.
Professor Watt, you mentioned there's 7 people have died. We don't know the circumstances or the ages, whether there were underlying health problems. But, it's very, very serious for some people. Can you put it into some kind of context for us? How minimal the risk is to most people, to set people's minds at rest. There'll be a lot of people who've had their first dose of AstraZeneca, myself included, who now might be thinking, if I get invited for the second dose, do I just hang on for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, as Danny said, it's about numbers. And so the risk of something like this happening is really small. These kinds of blood clotting incidents happen in people who haven't been vaccinated as well. And we tend to forget it, but there are occasional adverse reactions in people who have the flu vaccine. So what we have to do is say that really at the moment we should trust in the regulators, and there's no reason at all to be worried about getting the first or the second dose.
Yeah, well, not according to the European Medicines Agency. Well, they say there appears to be a clear link. There's a bit of a contradiction. There appears to be, then they say there's a clear link between the Oxford vaccine and rare blood clots. And Professor Watt, I just wonder, could there be a bit of turf war going on here? Could there be a bit of politics going on here? What are you guys saying within the medical community about this?
I wouldn't be drawn on that suggestion, but I would say that our MHRA, our regulator, was part of the European Medicines Agency until the Brexit deal, and we have total faith in them as independent regulators who are constantly looking at the data, working with the vaccine producers. So, with a combination of MHRA and the National Health Service making this available makes me feel very confident in the MHRA advice.
No matter what the European Medicines Agency says?
Yeah.
Okay.
Professor Altman, can we put into context here, maybe compared to other medications that people will be very familiar with, that, you know, have side effects, we're told, even things like paracetamol. I mean, let's be honest, who honestly, every time they have a headache, and I'm just saying paracetamol, whatever it is, Nurofen, ibuprofen, paracetamol, aspirin, who honestly takes this out every time and reads it? If you do read it, lots of side effects, allergic reactions, rashes, swelling, flushing, low blood pressure, fast heartbeat, it goes on and on. So they have to tell you all that, but the chances of that happening to you are probably very remote. So can you put that in context with this vaccine, say, compared to, I don't know, the contraceptive pill, say?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good way of putting it. You know, so when I mentioned before that we need to try and do a bit of risk analysis and get our heads around the maths, here we're talking about an event that's, you know, something like, 1 in 600,000 or thereabouts. And so if one stopped to think that women taking the contraceptive pill have a 1 in 100 chance of having a clotting event like this over any 10-year period, you know, it's hard to compare them like with like, isn't it? Because one's a sort of single event having a vaccine, the other is deciding on your method of contraception. And yet, you know, society tolerates that 1 in 100 risk very readily without debating it. And here we're kind of getting terribly, terribly emotional about something that's something like 1 in 600,000.
Yeah. And Professor Watt, obviously you're worried about take-up on this and the fact that some people, more people than normal, maybe put off this. So say you go along for your second vaccine, your first vaccine even, I suppose, do people have the right to say, no, actually, I would prefer, or I don't want the Oxford vaccine, can I have another one instead?
Of course, you can do that, but the fact is that the availability of the vaccines is not unlimited. And so most people will go with the vaccine that they're offered. And that's the right thing to do. If I were offered a vaccination, I would be absolutely delighted and I would take whatever was offered.
But you can wait. You can request and say, no, I don't want that, and I will wait till, say, a Pfizer becomes available.
Well, when you go to be vaccinated, you'll run through a series of questions about your health status. And at that point, you're completely free to walk away. I would just say that for the world to get back to normal, a combination of the social distancing measures that we've seen and a really strong vaccination program, these are really important.
And Professor Altman, if you have had your first dose and it was the AstraZeneca, and if you are feeling concerned, even though you are trying to allay those concerns for people today, when you're called for your second one, could you say, I don't want that, I want the Pfizer or the Moderna, and can you have a different vaccine the second time round?
So, tricky question. Yes, as an immunologist, no reason on earth why you can't. Some might even say you'd get a bit better immune response if you mix and match. On the other hand, you might drive your GP absolutely crazy if you ask for it, because the current guidance is not necessarily to mix and match, so it makes things very complex operationally. But if you want to have that discussion, no basic science reason why you can't.
So basically, Professor Altman, you believe at the end of the day the benefits of the AstraZeneca vaccine outweigh any deficits with it. So a blood clot may be less likely to happen than getting a clot due to COVID, for instance.
If you get severe COVID, you've got a 1 in 10, 1 in 20 chance of having a serious blood clot. So the best answer to that is get your vaccine, make some brilliant neutralizing antibodies, some brilliant T cells, and be safe and get back to normal.
Professors, thank you both very, very much indeed. Really appreciate your take.